How you doing? We're on. It's another episode of TNT Weekly, and I'm very, very happy with our guest today. But first off, I'd like to give much thanks to the Gibson Center, and I'd also like to point out that we did respect social distancing, and we have our masks on. But I'm going to take my mask off now because it keeps on falling down and off of my nose, and I can't really address it well. So how you doing again? Here at the Gibson Center, I want to thank the Gibson Center for giving me the opportunity to host and tape here. And it's just been wonderful. Check out the Gibson Center for any events that you may have upcoming. They have some really great packages, and they're within the COVID rules and regulations, and would love to see you if you have any events planned. They have a wonderful Halloween period coming up, October 31st. COVID safe, everything. Bring the kids out, it'll be great. Thank you again, Gibson Center. Remember, a community without the arts and culture is just, there's nothing to it. There's nothing there at all. And what else is in a community is not having the care and the services in our community fronted by a beautiful hospital, the Stevenson Memorial Hospital. And I'm excited about today's podcast. On the show today, I have President and CEO Jody Levac and Communication Corporate Officer for the Stevenson Memorial Hospital, Rachael Ogorek. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, Ogorek. Very close.
Ogorek, there
Yes.
you go. Really, it's going to be an informative show. We're going to talk about the Stevenson Memorial redevelopment, and there's nobody better to discuss this and give you all the information that you're just going to consume and appreciate today. Jody and Rachael, how you doing?
Excellent, Tony.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you for being on TNT Weekly. And as I do with all my shows, I really like to, introduce to the listeners our guests and sort of the journey to Alliston, if this is your home or the area, and your journey to Stevenson Memorial Hospital. And I'm going to start with you, Rachael. Give our listeners a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I do live in the community. We've been here for 4 years, but I grew up in a small town just east of Port Perry. So that's where a lot of my family is in the Durham region. So, fast forward to when I met my husband in Toronto. He was living in Barrie at the time, so we kind of settled in Barrie. We were there for 7 years, and so we came down this way. We just wanted a little bit more space. We do travel south a lot to see our families, so that might save a little bit of time. We settled here in Alliston, and we absolutely love it. I mean, this community has everything that a family needs. We have 2 little ones. I have a daughter who's 7 and a little boy who's 2.5. So this community is just fantastic, and we're just so happy to be here, and everyone's just so welcoming, so we're loving it.
Wonderful, Rachael.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
And Jody, yourself, what about your journey?
My journey here, I guess I've been at Stevenson Memorial, I think I'm in my 6th or 7th year. I forget, Tony, we first met probably 6-7 years ago.
Yes.
I love this community. I don't live here in the community. Mind you, my wife and I are looking for a house currently. So if there's a real estate agent paying, the housing market here is just it's tough. But I came here 6-7 years ago. I was seconded from a hospital, and originally I came under a management service agreement. Mm-hmm. I'm the 3rd CEO that's come with a mental health background. I don't know what that says, but proud and very privileged to be the CEO of such a wonderful hospital, community hospital.
Wonderful. As you had mentioned, Jody, our first meeting was way back in my involvement with the Mill Pond Medical Center in Alliston, and it was just in that transition when Annette Jones, we were speaking to, was in the departure, and you were coming in, and you were so gracious and listening to our vision for the Mill Pond. I mean, we didn't even have a shovel in the ground yet at that time, but we wanted to collaborate and work in parallel with the medical community. You were gracious in that, but I know that you were coming in overwhelmed, taking over the hospital, taking a position and just getting settled in, right? But that's when we met last. So, and I don't recall, Jody, at that time that there was a redevelopment plan in the works. So that would be 2012, roughly, when it's a while.
It's been quite some
7-8
time.
years.
Yeah.
But there really was no plan in the works, Jody, at that time?
There was a plan by the board, and there's been a desire since probably going back to 2008 And there were early discussions with other land developers about what the vision for Stevenson could be. And there was a submission done back in 2008 and 9 in partnership with South Lake Regional Health Center, but the government rejected it. And essentially when I came on board, the idea of redeveloping Stevenson had been, was at a failed point with government. And I had the dubious task of sort of seeing what the vision could possibly be.
Okay. You know, we know that this community is exploding at the seams, right? When I look at the Stevenson Memorial Hospital and understand the population growth and the growth expected to happen, I've heard, you know, the doubling of the population by 2025. I say to myself, how is this hospital maintaining care? I just don't really comprehend it. So, you know, help the listeners understand that, and maybe some numbers or some stats that you may have, that this community is growing immensely, and the growth of the hospital is not happening to support that growth of incoming population, right? So give us sort of the reasoning behind, okay, well, we need to expand, we need these redevelopment plans and visions for this community, and tell us what challenges are there at the hospital, you know, operating in such a growing community that is rapidly growing and will continue to grow in the years ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know, Rach, do you wanna start?
Well, I'll start by saying, you know, Dr. Myatt said it as well. You know, the numbers definitely don't lie. Our current emergency department was built for 7,000 visits a year, and we see almost 40,000 a year, and that does startle people a lot. You know, the hospital, as you see it today, was built in 1964, which is astounding. You think, you know, it's 2020 now, and so it's unbelievable how much this community has changed in that time. So we can't stand by and not make the changes that need to happen now for our redevelopment. And so Jody's kind of been at the forefront and really pushing this forward. Certainly being in the pandemic this year has brought some challenges for sure. But we're forging ahead. We're currently in the midst of building an ICU right now. So we're doing everything that we can while we wait for redevelopment to be approved officially by the ministry to make the changes that we can with our current infrastructure.
Okay. So the way I'm understanding, Rachael, is not only is there a requirement for more square footage to bring in more care for this community, it is a very old building. That probably needs some repair in certain areas and upgrades to, you know, to work in with the times and get upgraded. Is that a better way to?
So, you know, we're here at the Gibson Center looking at this wonderful historic building, and there's an importance in arts and culture and history. But in medicine, there's not. We need to have modern PIDAC and infection control practices. We have to have proper ventilation. We have to manage infectious disease and deliver medical care in facilities that meet the current technological demands. That building was built when we didn't have Baxter pumps, and we didn't have our beds are smart beds. And so as we evolve with technology and equipment, the building has become woefully inadequate to deliver high quality volume medical services. So it's the challenge upon us. I mean, we've been able to double the physician person power in the building. Dr. Myatt was here, you know, Dr. Safar, we got Dr. Ramirez, Dr. Richardson, I could go on and on. Some phenomenal ER physicians.
Incredible.
And they're incredibly talented, but they need modern medical space. And for the residents listening, you know, I feel like every time I start this, I always apologize. You're gonna come to our hospital, you're gonna meet unbelievable ED nurses, unbelievable physicians. You're going to get the quality of care that you won't. It's best of medicine in terms of person power, but we're compromised. Your confidentiality is going to be compromised. The ability to have patient privacy is compromised in those buildings, and so give full credit where credit's due. It's our teams that deliver care in these very cramped, challenging spaces. Our patients have to have care in a cramped, outdated medical facility, and I just think the residents here deserve more. Nobody should have a two-tiered medical system, and the hospital needs to be modernized so that when residents come, they get the quality of care they so deserve.
Yes, and so making even more sense now in both of your comments for the expansion and the requirement for redevelopment, absolutely. Could you give us a bit on, I recall when this started, this redevelopment vision, I first thought it was just the ER. And then in first discussing, when you showed interest in, by the way, I have to say this, when you have leaders like this in our community, especially in a medical corridor like Stevenson Memorial Hospital, this gentleman reached out to me and said, I'd like to be on the platform to tell our listeners a little bit more about the redevelopment. I mean, I can reach the Pope in the Vatican a lot easier than this gentleman. And he reached out to me and said, I want to speak to this community, Tony. Could I be on the show? I love the podcast with Dr. Myatt. I want to say more about the redevelopment. I believe you even canceled an executive meeting today, or
Yeah.
so. When you have leadership, I just wanted to say, when you have leadership like that in our community, like it's the best. There's care, there's passion, there's drive. These leaders in our community want to do better for us. So please listen in, because it's really valuable, all this information. So can you give us sort of an update on what sort of services you're envisioning to come in? I looked at the drawings, and again, I thought it was just an ER, and you're adding an enormous amount of space. Just sort of inform our listeners on the care that you're envisioning to bring in, and the improvements that you will see in this hospital that will better serve our community. Not only the capacity aspect to it, I mean, that will be resolved with more square footage, but the care. What do you see happening here in your vision, Jody?
So when you go through trying to get a hospital redeveloped, it's I keep telling people it's a marathon, not a sprint. And to work the number of processes, both bureaucratically with the Ministry of Health and then working with Queen's Park, our politicians, to create alignment takes time. And what the process begins, it's a 5-stage process with the ministry. It's really actually 6 steps. And the first is pre-cap, and then there's a stage 1, stage 2. And those stages are probably the hardest stages, in the sense that you're planning what you want to see for your vision. And we're through stage 1. We've had full approval by the ministry, and our stage 2 is draft, and I'm very excited that I got off Capitol Branch yesterday, and we're talking about being able to submit our stage 2, which ends the planning phase. And that's really where the vision is. You're taking the growth that's going to happen in the community, and you're applying it to an algorithm that actually starts to map out your square footage per your service delivery. So our emerge department is just one example where it's woefully inadequate in space. And so we're talking about what sort of modern space would be required to meet what's going to be happening in 2025 and in 2030 and in 2035 in terms of projection of growth. And the thing with these hospitals is, because it's such a lengthy process, the day you open, you're too small. And we've seen that time and time again with other hospitals. And so we're trying to push the process as quickly as we can, because we need the space now. Rachel's right. We can't wait. We have to have an ICU that meets modern standards. Painfully, I listen to families who have to leave the community because their loved one gets acutely ill. They require intense ICU services, and they need to leave to go to another hospital. And that's hard for residents to have to drive to and from. We should be able to deliver that care, and we're capable of delivering that care here at Stevenson with the person power we have. So we're moving on developing these services so that residents don't have to face it. They get the closer quality care, closer care to home. And really, that's been the focus short term. And then long term is this 25-year blueprint, which is driving what the stage 2 looks like. And it is exciting. It's the sense that we're not just doing emerge, we're doing all the services that support a high-functioning emerge. So that's your pharmacy, that's your ORs. You can't run a high-functioning emerge without having your pharmacy, your lab, your diagnostic imaging, CT and mammography, everything. You need all those services that actually help support an emerge. So they're all being redeveloped as part of the master plan. And in that, I even have a bigger vision. If we're doing that and we're busting out the building, we're going to put onto the second floor to add, and COVID has taught us that infection control is so critical in a hospital. And so the ministry is directing us to do single occupancy rooms. Right now we have 80%, and that was standard pre-COVID when I was going through the planning process. But last night's discussion with Capital is, Jody, go ahead and plan it so that every person has their own room with their own washroom. And you see that in the Humber River regional build, and you see it in some of the newer builds, and Stevenson deserves to have that for its residents. So that's what we're planning to do.
So there has been some sort of redesign, but you had the vision already, Jody. I mean, some pre-COVID design thought process, but post-COVID world that we're entering now, there has been a little bit of an adjustment, right?
Correct. We're constantly evolving, and the ministry's got to evolve in terms of its policy. So pre-COVID, the ministry was 80-20 split, 80% single rooms with 20% ward rooms. Now the ministry's rethinking that in COVID, and so they should.
Yes.
And we should be building hospitals that can meet the modern day infectious control standards. When that building was built, we didn't have Ebola. We didn't have SARS 1 or 2. We didn't have COVID. And so we've learned medicine's about evolving in science and knowing what needs to be in a building to be able to deliver safe, high quality care. We can't have people infecting one another. And so critical to that, design function is important. And that's what we've been working on. And
well, another shout out to your operations, because you even in that building, in that framework, you've maintained infectious control incredibly, while being, overwhelmed at capacity levels, right? So a real efficient team, this Stevenson Memorial Hospital.
Yeah, the residents, the viewership may not know this. When you come into our emerge, we have 2 trauma rooms. So if you have a significant motor vehicle accident, trauma, we may have to call Orange if it's really critical care. And we're having our helicopter come in 52, 54 times a year, but it's a critical service that helps save lives. In those trauma rooms, we need to have proper air exchange. So if you look at the roof of Stevenson, there's a really interesting picture, Tony, from 1977 in my office, and you look at the roof of the hospital, it's empty. You go to the roof of our hospital today, it is full of air exchanges, and we're constantly evolving to make sure that that old building at least meets the modern standards. And we've put a lot of capital investment into venting and proper infrastructure to deliver high quality care, and that's been ongoing. While we're still pushing for the proper infrastructure that we really need.
Wonderful. Rachael, going back to one of your comments, so you said presently at Stevenson that you are improving the ICU area of Stevenson right now. You're trying to get ahead, or you just have to up to date.
It's so we're actually building a level 2 ICU. We actually previously to this, we haven't had a dedicated ICU space at all. We've always been caring for patients with higher acuity to a certain degree until the need to transfer out does happen. But we're wanting to try and keep, as Jody said, some patients in their community hospital if possible. And we can't say that patients still won't need to be transferred out in the future. I mean, that's still a possibility depending on the level of trauma and of the patient, but we're trying to keep some of our patients closer to home if possible. And again, we'll be continuing to care for the patients with higher care needs in a newer area in the hospital. So built within our current walls.
And staying on expansion, and this just came to mind with Mary McGill, with the expansion coming to fruition, is Mary McGill staying on the site, or are there services moving into the hospital? How is that working?
Yeah, so I have a background in mental health, and one of the struggles I've had ever since I've come to Stevenson is that people who receive mental health care have to come up to the Mary McGill Center, and it's a breach of privacy walking up those steps. There's only 2 types of people who come to Mary McGill. They're either people come to my office, or they're coming for mental health service, and both require some degree of confidentiality. I'm pleased to state that we're going to evolve our mental health service to be part of our ambulatory program. Whether you're coming to see any outpatient type service, mental health will be integrated in our full outpatient service continuum, and that'll give privacy back and dignity back to mental health patients. And the reality is, the Mary McGill building, if the 64 building is woefully inadequate, the 1902 Mary McGill building is woefully inadequate. It has 50 amp service, you can't upgrade electrical, it's unable to carry any type of clinical function. It used to be the old lab. The lab now has so many, 50 amp won't run our lab, I can tell you that, and there's no way to fix it because of all the asbestos and problems in the building.
I mean, even myself, I have edgy anxiety from time to time opening up that door at Mary McGill. I don't want to go in.
Yeah.
So I could just imagine, but on on the way you're championing all the services coming into the community, the fact that mental health is important to Stevenson and bringing dignity to that. I mean, it's an epidemic out there, mental health. It's debilitating.
It's always going to be a part of the services that we provide to the community.
Wonderful.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
that's not going to change.
We've really fought hard, and in fact, I'm really proud. Mary McGill has two top-notch psychiatrists I've had the privilege of working with. Dr. Steve Stokel, former chief of psychiatry at Southlake, along with Dr. Madi Maimapour,
Yeah.
who's now the chief at Southlake. Both come and provide psychiatric care.
Wow.
These are top-notch psychiatrists that are available here in Alliston. They want to be able to treat mental health folks with proper dignity and care. The building doesn't do it,
No.
but our redevelopment will finally be able to bring that vision for mental health care to our community.
That's fantastic. Next topic I want to get into is I think is the concern for everyone with a vision like this. A vision is one thing, but funding is another. And I can fully understand when you're dealing with levels of government and taxpayer dollars. Sometimes it becomes a little bit more complicated. So I know that the journey is tough. I don't fully understand that level of journey in dealing with ministry guidelines and ministry push and ministry support, but I do know that this community is unwavering with its support in funding your vision for this future expansion. Everyone from a $10 donation to, I'm certain, millions. Where are you at with the funding, and help our listeners understand, and really in layman's terms, this building built well on schedule will cost $250 million, if that's the number. Today we have so many millions. We need so many millions based on allowances or steps or procedures by the government that's instilling in your push to develop that. Help us understand where we're at this community with funding.
With funding, Rachel, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but so this is a really key question, and viewers may not understand, is that when you go to redevelop a hospital, the government doesn't pay for it all. They actually look to the local community to say, how important is it to this community to have a new redeveloped hospital?
I did not know that.
So what they do is they make a 90-10 split. 90% of what is built, the government pays for. They turn around and put the FF&E, fixtures, furniture, and equipment, which usually runs 10% of the total cost of construction, back on the community. That term is called the local share. That's what they call the local share portion of a redevelopment. We're sitting at today with our stage 2, just a little over $167 million build with the vision we have, and about $30 million falls to local share.
Okay.
That
The
means
responsibility of the local community.
This community has to come up with $30 million in order to make sure that our construction project meets the ministry standards. So that means our foundation has been tasked with the challenge of having to raise $30 million local share. And you may not think, well, $30 million. Well, we actually went out and did a feasibility study. We looked at whether or not there was appetite in this community. And really, this money that comes from local share is the voice of the resident to government that this is important in this community. If you can't raise your local share, you run the risk and jeopardy of not being able to build a new hospital. So the government sits back and watches how strong is the appetite in this community to want to have a new hospital.
Okay.
And they look to see how well are they doing with the local share. We've had tremendous support from people like Honda, the Nottawasaga Foundation. Simcoe County has donated $10 million already to our local share portion. So we've raised the needle. If you drive Stevenson, you'll see a billboard up in the front, and we're about 50% of the way to the local share.
Okay,
Which
15
is good.
million. We're around 15 million
Which
right
is
now.
which is pretty good. But as we get ready to get our stage 2 submitted, the critical factor on the checkbox of whether or not we're going to get a nod from government is how much has this community really raised? Do the residents really want that? And the term I take when I tell viewers is if you don't give to your local hospital, you're really saying that the care of that building is okay to government. Silence is collusion. You have to speak up and give to your local campaign, whether it's $1 to whatever you can afford, to say that it's a message to Queen's Park that the residents in the community really believe in having a new hospital. And so that's the task of the viewers, is to say, how important is your local community hospital? It's not our hospital. Dr. Myatt said it best, it's the community's hospital.
Yeah.
The critical capital equipment of a hospital isn't paid for by government. I get complaints to my office about how poor the wheelchair is or how dingy the building is in terms of a stretcher or whatever. That falls to the foundation to raise annual capital. And the more the community gives, the more I can give Dr. Myatt, Dr. Safar, and the other physicians who want high quality care equipment, capital equipment, in their hands. Okay. And so it's a reflection of the community's will. And the local share of this redevelopment is becoming more and more critical as I get further down the path with the bureaucrats and the politicians.
Okay, all right. And what is the sort of drop dead date, if I may put it in that manner, for getting this community portion in check?
So I've been telling our foundation that as we get ready to submit our draft stage 2, the word draft, because we've got an approval now, and we've worked really hard with Capital Branch over the last 6 months to align a stage 2 submission. We've got about 12 to 18 months to raise the money. And you'll see that our capital campaign, and it's being chaired by Sylvia Biffis from the Nottawasaga Foundation, is really challenging everybody in the community that now is the time to give. We really need to get behind this in order to give a voice to government that, yeah, we deserve a new hospital here in Alliston, and the way to do it is residents, by donating to the campaign for redevelopment, really are giving a very clear message that, yeah, local community care is important.
And within the foundation for this community chunk of money that's required, what has been the time frame to accumulate half of the projected requirement?
So it's been going since I started. I mean, we started back at there was a $4 million donation from Honda probably 3-4 years ago. They got on board. They were early adopters. They wanted to show leadership in the community. Simcoe County, the County Alliance, a hospital alliance, which the 7 CEOs sit on. Every year there's about $30 million that comes from the county, and they allow 7 CEOs to sit down and try to come up and divvy it up. I can tell you those are some of the most painful meetings I've ever had in my life, trying to divvy up that portion. During the initial, when I arrived, I was able to negotiate with my fellow CEOs that Stevenson's time is now. Royal Victoria has been redeveloped. South Lake's been redeveloped. Hospitals around have been redeveloped. And us and Collingwood both took a real stance to say that our time is now. And so the CEOs agreed, which is not very often CEOs agree. We've agreed to allow Stevenson to have the access to that $10 million for the local share. So those were early wins along the journey, but now we're getting into the halfway point of the journey, and we really need the community to step up and start to contribute to the local share.
So you can see the finish line. It's there. There's a push, but it's absolutely critical right now that every possible dollar that can come in on that community portion is vital to this project, right? Tell me, is there a risk then, is what you're saying? And listeners, listen to this, please. Is there a risk, Jody, and Rachael, all these efforts, all these dreams, this 8, 9 year, 10-year plan, $15 million has been accumulated for the community portion. Is there a chance that if you don't hit that target, that this dream and this vision for expansion could be gone?
There are 122 hospitals in the province of Ontario. Many of them, 80 of them, are medium-sized hospitals like Stevenson Memorial, all fighting because they're woefully been neglected by previous governments. So they're all pushing Capital Branch that my project is important. So there's a competitiveness across the province. So if we don't raise our local share, it makes it easy for the bureaucrats to say, well, another community has raised its local share, it's good to go, it's hungry to have this hospital redeveloped. So we're in a competitive environment, and all I can urge listeners is that, how important is your local hospital? Do you Do you want to stand by and continue to receive care in a 1964 building? I don't want to. I believe the vision is achievable. I believe that the community wants it. And the way to do it is give a clear message to Queen's Park and to our ministry that this we're raising the local share. What's the stall? What's the reason? There's no reason to stop this project from being greenlighted because we're there. We've raised our local share.
Tell me, on the foundation side of accumulating this community portion, and this just comes to light here, the community contributing, and you reach the target of that amount of money, 30 million, right, to read that checkbox, and you go to the ministry on your next stage. Here I am. The community pitched in. Let's go, let's build. And we know the way the world is. I mean, COVID changed all of our lives. So the future is a lot different to many than it used to be, because we thought everything was just naturally happening and things can change. So what would happen if you meet the mark of 30 million, the foundation works so hard, gets that money, you go to the ministry and they say, sorry, it's just not in the works.
Yeah. So
what happens to that money? Is that money that can be used by the hospital? What happens then?
So for me, that money still needs to go to a redevelopment, and our time is now. You're right. We are in the third fastest growing region in the province. There's no reason to deny us having a redeveloped hospital in a high growth community. Also in a community that has been staunch progressive conservative for years. We have a progressive conservative government in power. There's no reason for any further delay. Minister Wilson, Jim Wilson, he was minister, has been a big advocate of making sure that this hospital is a top priority. And he's announced his retirement. Good for him. I'm happy and sad at the same time. Whoever is going to be sitting here, they've been elected. Jim has said numerous times he's been elected here because the hospital is the top priority when he talks to his constituents when it comes voting time.
Yes.
So there should be no delay. And if there is a delay, there's political action people can take. And that money, local share, is undeniably the voice to government that it's time.
Okay. So listeners out there, this community, I mean, right here is an example of the push and the passion that the leaders of this hospital want for this community to bring in better care, better services, as they've explained to you. So, if you don't think $10 makes a difference, or whatever you're doing, businesses out there are really feeling the COVID crunch. But we still have businesses in this community, for example, Stevenson Bed and Breakfast, that had a function and raised $6,000. I mean, it's just unbelievable. This community is unwavering, and that's the push we need. The leaders of this hospital are just saying that based on the political action and requirements on that checklist, that this community has to come up with its portion, which is the signal to our government that we have interest in expanding this hospital. Is that the proper layman's way to say it? I mean, simply put, we need your support in dollars and contributions to meet that match and that target, so Jody and his team can go with that next stage of government to say, government, look, our community pitched in, we have it, let's go, right?
Yeah, it's gonna take everyone from, we're looking at the bigger organizations to small businesses to families to, I know there were a couple of children that had some lemonade stands over the summer. Every little bit helps. It makes it so you're right. So $10 up to the thousands and more. So it's all going to help towards our goal. We do have you'll see in the next few months we're going to have some initiatives that are really going to engage the community.
Yes.
With corporate video with some some familiar faces explaining the need for the hospital to expand, to a lawn sign campaign. Jody will continue to do his town halls as we progress throughout the stages of redevelopment, and we're just going to continue to push and engage our community. And I know that they're supportive. I know that they've certainly showed that to date, and we're going to just push forward. And we're looking at from the point of when we submit our draft 2.
Yes.
We're looking at about an 18-month to 24-month gap of when we need to try and get that local share confirmed.
Okay.
So yeah.
So again, that back to time frame, 12 to 18 months, like in a realistic time frame for this dream and this vision to get to the next stage, to start seeing some progressive means of construction and redevelopment. Perfect world, when do you see this vision coming to fruition?
Yeah, so I used to be really aggressive, thinking that every time we put in a submission of a stage, the government is mandated to respond within 90 days. So when I put my stage 1 in, it was 2016. And it was this summer that I finally got approval on it. Back and forth and back and forth. I can tell you that the design that we have here for Stevenson maximizes the 11.8 acres on Fletcher. It is what the government is willing, and the appetite is there to do a redevelopment. And you know, I'm hopeful that when the stage 2 goes in, that it's going to be a smooth and an approval, and then we can go to implementation and design, which is stage 3, where we get architectural design. Stage 4 is really the contracting out, who's going to do the work, and stage 5 is getting the keys and turning it over like a house. And I'm hoping it will be 2025 somewhere that the construction's done and the community has a beautiful hospital it really deserves.
That'd be amazing. So this is really wonderful. Community, let's really give the push out there with these leaders taking time out of their day. We're taping on Thursday, it's mid-afternoon. It's not after work or before work. This is important to them, and they're here for that purpose, to share their vision and, you know, inform you of the process. Is there anything else our listeners can do, or is reaching out to local levels of government, provincial levels of government, federal levels of government? Terry Dowdle, now Conservative, you know, from Simcoe, knows our area very well and supportive. What can listeners do that have been challenged by COVID and maybe see this vision, agree to this vision, but at the end of the day they're challenged in a certain position, but they still want to do something? Is a voice, tell me, where should they go? What should they do?
So Jim Wilson has sparked his petition process, and so you can always go over to Mr. Wilson's website and you can print off a petition and send it in, and you can send it to Minister Elliott directly, and you can write your own emails to Minister Elliott about the importance of local health care. The building, you know, again, I was saying that we brought, when I started there were 68 docs at Stevenson. We have 118, and they're all early adopters to wanting to see a vision come. They've consulted on the design of the building. They've been very active in making sure that this meets what they want to see to deliver medicine. So by talking to your minister, Jim Wilson is one thing. You'll see me going to town councils. I'm starting a level of deputations to all the town councils. I believe municipal government needs to get involved, whether it's through a health care tax levy to developers, to give to local health care. They've done that in bigger regions.
I like that idea. I like that idea.
Or, you know, because we're a county, there are other ways that we can do that. So you're going to see me encouraging the municipality to start to get involved. It's time they got involved in their local health, their local hospital, to help. And you can do that by supporting deputations, watching when we come to government, asking questions, holding our mayor and deputy mayor accountable in your respective counties about what are they doing to help their local hospital. Elections are coming up, and healthcare tends to be, I think we've learned from COVID, how important is your healthcare? How important is it? To me, there's no more single important cause in the world than your health. It's the most important thing. So you need to get active. You can't just, we're going to be there when you need us, but right now we need your viewers to start to help us bear this vision to fruit.
Boy, I like that developer. You know, there should be something in those development fees. You know, that so much for Stevenson Foundation and for the hospital, and
it just makes sense.
I mean, it just
You think about putting all these homes in, and you know we're going to double the growth here in New Tecumseh, and a lot of it is young families. You know, they buy homes because they're either commuting or they to a working family, because homes are so bloody expensive.
Yeah.
But these are families that are going to require obstetrical care. You're going to want to have your baby at Stevenson. You're going to want to, and then we have a lot of seniors. We have the other end of the continuum where a lot of people have sold their homes in other places and retired here because it's just such a beautiful community. But senior services are important too. So I've got a hospital that has to serve two ends of the continuum, and it's only going to get more, the more pressure's only going to grow with all this new development. So it would make sense for developers to pay a portion of that. If it's not under the bylaws of the municipality to be able to enforce that, then the municipality has to get involved, because we can't have all this infrastructure growth without the services growing with the community.
Totally.
And your hospital needs that help. We're not South Lake Regional Health Center. We're not a quaternary. I'm not looking to do cardiac surgery at Stevenson. But what you can do if you have a heart attack is we'll stabilize you. You can come to our emerge, get solid care, and we know time is critical. So you've got a hospital that's local that can stabilize your life. We'll get you down to South Lake if you need a stint in the cardiac cath lab, and we'll bring you back and rehab you here. I'm not looking to build a regional cardiac center. I just want to build a center that is augmented with all the other healthcare services, but that it serves its local community.
Jody, you sound like you own the hospital, because I'm hearing almost an entrepreneurial sort of passion here. You're so passionate about bringing in these wonderful, wonderful visions to our community with the hospital. We're coming to the end of the podcast here, but is there any last word, anything you want to say from your heart? You guys are champions, and in my look, you guys are champions for what you're doing. As Jody, you had just mentioned, is healthcare important? Absolutely. Look at us in COVID. I saw it in Dr. Myatt in the interview. I see it with the doctors that I'm affiliated with. I see it in your visit here. Medical care in our community. We're blessed. We're blessed to have a hospital, and we're almost there. We're almost there to get it improved, redeveloped, and the community is unwavering. Let's continue the push. They just need your help and your push. So, last words, Rachael.
Yeah, we're so lucky to have this hospital here for our community, and it is my hospital as well. I've been a patient before I had my son at Stevenson, so we're so lucky to have this healthcare so close to home. So we just want to bring our hospital to the next level, and really make it the hospital that our community deserves and needs. We were so appreciative also of all the support we've received this year from COVID, all the businesses that came by and brought us food and donations, and all the businesses that came through and did that parade, and it really meant a lot to our staff, and so we really appreciate it. I know it's been a difficult year, as you said, for everyone. But if you are able to help, if you go to transformingstevenson.ca, that's the foundation's website. You can click on donate now towards the campaign. Because of you, you can. Because of you, we can is the name of the campaign. But certainly, also if you're interested in volunteering, you can email foundation@smhosp.on.ca. Help out with the campaign if you're interested. There's lots of different things you can do to help out. So transformingstevenson.ca has all that information, and certainly keep your eyes out for the hospital's website. We'll be putting out some of the new redevelopment updates as we progress in the stages. So that's stevensonhospital.ca, and also our social media channels as well to follow all the updates about what's going on at the hospital from a day-to-day basis. So Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, we're on the social media at Stevenson Hosp or Stevenson Hospital. You'll find us there.
And you have something going on, Stevenson found a jog or something, or a jogging. What's what do you have planned? Stevenson is always in the works for funding, and
absolutely.
What's going on there?
The foundation has a lot of really fun events coming up. So they've just launched Fall Into Fitness. Fall Into Fitness. So if you go to transformingstevenson.ca, you'll see all their fun events that they have going on. So if you can do a walk in the morning every day before work, or any way that you can fit fitness in, or maybe you already do, if you can create a fundraising page from the Fall Into Fitness campaign, and you can just get your contacts, your family, your friends to help support you a little bit, and then that fundraising goes towards the foundation. But they've got some great event, and it's just coming up for the holiday season as well. They have a Home for the Holidays virtual event where you can actually pick up a dinner and eat it at home and watch a virtual event. So details for that will be coming out soon. I know they're going to be doing a gift wrapping fundraiser as well. So
Okay.
lots of things that are accessible for everyone
Okay.
for the next season coming up. So.
All right. So Stevenson Foundation. Okay. Link up all their socials, right?
Yeah.
Anything, everything helps. Jody, last word, sir.
So I'll leave you with this. For the viewers, I have the best job in the world, privileged to serve this community. And we at the hospital, our senior executive team, our physicians, Rachael, everybody, we want to make sure we're serving the community. Our assessment center for COVID is an example of that. People said that we're too small of a hospital to be able to open an assessment center. We won't find the resources. We've really pivoted and moved and done big things for this community, we think anyways, and we want to continue to be there. When you need us, we'll be there for you. We need our community now more than ever to step up and help with our vision to make healthcare service delivery be high quality and in a building that deserves and treats people with dignity, confidentiality, and respect. So I leave you with that, and there's a couple of things that are important in my life. Birth of my kids, finishing my doctorate degree, getting this redevelopment through. And I can only do it if the community stands behind me 100% and galvanizes behind our vision. So you really have an opportunity as a listener to get active and involved, whether it's through what Rachel's talking about or whether it's through $1 to our, my office is, Rachael helps me manage the communications in my office. Don't hesitate to reach out if you've got a concern or if you've got something you don't understand in what we're trying to do. There's a real methodology here, and I'm hoping that the community will really stand behind us and support us.
Okay, wonderful. And I believe I said this earlier, we're taping on Thursday. The podcast will be released on Saturday, but meanwhile, I'm feeding all my social feeds with the site plan, the layout. It is crazy. It's crazy what they're doing there. Crazy. It's amazing. So remember, it's your hospital, okay? It's yours. It's mine. It's Jody's. It's Rachel's. It's your hospital. Lead the push. They're champions pushing for us. Just needs your support. Every dollar counts. Every voice counts. New tech rocks, okay? New tech rocks. And I know that you'll be behind this push. Let's make this happen. Stevenson Memorial Hospital, we are blessed to have these leaders in our community, this service in our community, just wonderful. So flip around this podcast, share it, get the word out there, because we are going to get this hospital, okay? Right on?
Thank you, Tony. Thank you. Thank
right
you.
on. Rock on, we'll see you on the next podcast. All right, take care now.